In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Beginning is described to us as infinite void, without shape or form. The best way to our knowledge to personify said void would be with water. In the midst of this void arose a voice of superior intellect maturity. This voice uttered a manifestation that would come to pass. That manifestation being in the form of these words: let there be light. And there was light. Soon there were other manifestations, one of which being the earth to separate the waters. And because we share all of the elements of the earth, we too can call ourselves earth. Greetings and welcome to another step in the journey, another layer on the temple. This is the build. I am accompanied, as always, with Brother Eli, who will come forth with the opening announcements, and then we will discuss into the matter of the subject this evening. Blessings.
Blessings, Brother Michael. Happy to see you. Despite the events that happened yesterday with the lights, the words we are expressing freely, brothers and sisters, are not meant to offend anyone by no means. Our words are not meant to be in any competition with anyone else's wisdom. Your wisdom and understanding is yours alone. We are choosing to remain consecrated while in the richness of blessings and being in the furnace of affliction. Blessings. Conquering ignorance is essential. Nobody is born wise. A person has to make serious efforts to develop the qualities needed to be able to speak and achieve mayat without falling into the twin traps of vanity and greed. As an Egyptian sage or our brother and sister, our total existence rests on knowledge and not on belief. And of course, in the ancient Kemetic book of two ways, it says that the causes of wrongdoing 4,000 years ago and to the present day is clearly ignorance, meaning the lack of knowledge, and immaturity, meaning the inability to see in the future. When people cannot see in the future, it creates a challenge, it creates a panic. So, if we develop enough maturity, we know that good times come and the bad times come. And we will exist in both states in the calmness to the best of our abilities. Blessings. And I gotta plug in my laptop. I forgot. I know I forgot something.
Blessings. Today, we will be discussing the idea of discussing. Quite frankly, we have come to a point in the build where talk has fallen victim to, how shall I say this? Talk has fallen victim to the inflation of the economy we are creating. Talk is becoming cheaper and cheaper. It is time for action. And so we will be discussing the idea of even discussions. Is there progress? Do we move forward, even when only in speech? Are we regressing? Is talk, has talk become no more than a digression from our aggressions? What is the importance of talk, if any? And what actions are to be done here on the build to make it that much more apparent that this is not a place of just talk? I will speak briefly about this because, to be quite honest, this is a vulnerable moment for me. I am a person who has seen sacred spaces such as this one while wearing several hats, even having several spots of which to bring forth my thoughts to the inhabitants of said sacred spots, sacred places. And I can attest to the fact that the highest achievement in those sacred spaces have been talking, have been communication, have been the splendor that is so complicated in regards to the lexicon, to sound even poetically in the most minuscule of expressions. The articulation of the word itself being an emulation of something divine. However, to even consider yourselves a master of this, whether it is just the rhetoric that goes with a certain philosophy, or the charismaticness that comes from some voices to bring forth more people to hear your speaking. Is it all just talk? The last few bills have been more talking about progressions, about things that would become more palatable, that would have three dimensions, that would be held by hand, that could be inhabited, something that would prove that we are closer to the creator than just speakers of the creation. The vulnerability comes from the fact that I am one who has achieved a certain amount of ability to talk or be a certain level or ranking officiant of speech, utilizing what has been deemed as an arcane study, an arcane work, an arcane technology, something that is being superseded hundreds of times over. And coming from a person who felt that the greatest achievement I could ever ascertain would be the articulation of my voice, being a child that did not speak until he was 5, and going from that dynamic to being able to be thought of as a notable figure in philosophical and religious roles in different churches, places of spiritual awakening, with certain increments of thinking that I did not have much more to offer other than the sinew of my muscle fiber and the blood of my blood and the decaying of my bones through manual labor. I have told myself this multiple times to be told something very different in response, that I had much to bring into a fold, a family circle, a spiritual group, those who seek enlightenment of some sort, though even at the time, I did not deem myself in anywhere near enlightened, just a person who has dealt with the problem long enough, much like geniuses believe is the difference between the genius and insanity. Those who deal with the problem long enough find the answer. In this vulnerable moment, resting within this vulnerable moment, I know that it will be a teaching moment for myself. And not all lessons are fun to learn. And yet, there are many who have placed themselves in even further afflictions, have overcome and achieved through the obstacles of further afflictions, and have been crowned kings of their craft because of it. The problem is, it is very few and far between when it comes to the culture that we are speaking about, our culture. And those who deem things like financial instabilities an excuse for the regression of said progress. It is debatable whether or not it is even valid. I say debatable because though we could unanimously and emphatically proclaim and declare the opposite, I find in my own life certain obstacles towards having a mastership of said craft to become more of a creator. I do not know where truly to begin in regards to new beginnings. I am a person of many routines and have deemed those routines too comfortable at times. Nevertheless, I fight myself pushing towards the uncomfortability of change and find that my shadow pulls me backwards. And the shadow that I speak of are the many other times in which I try to advance myself only to fall, not forward, but backward. In a very literal sense, at times, I have fallen. The only times where I had fallen forward came in the vein of speech and literature, which are two arcane technologies. Over the last few days, quite frankly, since the last build, I had been seeking certain counsel from those who I have deemed quite wise enough to answer questions for the certain apprenticeships of a curious wanderer who wants to one day deem that something palatable will outlive him on this world and how to go about making it come to pass. They have given both free and clear options, as well as those that have certain costs attached to them. However, when researching of all of the inventors, they did not need money to the degree that which I was inquiring. They did not need classes. They simply took the speech and the books, the arcane technologies, and enhanced upon them to bring forth something palatable onto the world. Over the last few days, I have seen great works, the makings of great works, huge hunks of metal at millions of pounds that any one human being, any 100 human beings could not possibly carry. And yet, heavy lies the crown of a mind that can develop these things and have them come into being. Things that most of the world would not even think about, they would scoff or even ignore. People who would celebrate living their best life on cruise ships without knowing how these cruise ships were created. And that dynamic versus me on the other side of the smoke and mirrors, seeing the fact that is a steamroller engine taking anywhere between a month to years to create, that is not necessarily forgotten, but never given the credit it is truly due by inhabitants of said ship, and at least appreciation for it being created. These, the creators of these things, these are gods. They are creators of things that they cannot even hold in their hand. They are so big, they are so vast, but they held them in their mind and brought them to fruition. I have to admit that up until the last couple of weeks, I had not marveled at things like this: steam engines, propellers of ships, automobiles, even something as right in your face as the very computer screen that we are on right now. So much taken for granted. I do not wish to regress from all of these progressions. My issue is I do not want the technology that I know of to be thought of as a digression from the aggression of not progressing. I do not want this to become a crutch for me, as if this is something that is the only thing I know. If you can hear the vulnerability in my voice, you are quite welcome. I believe that showing vulnerability in spaces such as these makes it that much more sacred. But I am indeed vulnerable. It is something I am not proud of. So rather than being a person who believes in having some type of definite answer by the end of the build's hours, I will tell you, spoiler alert, there will not be one from me. But if you choose to continue through this egression, through this moving, know that where we are going is not familiar territory to myself. And if you are indeed, in your heart of hearts, in the smallest nooks and crannies of your mind, at all leery or even afraid of where the future will go, not just for the build, but for yourself in this economy that is crumbling around us, in this circle of political unrest that is crumbling amongst us. Know that I share that too. I am in need of time to collect my thoughts further. I hope that Brother Eli is ready to elaborate on any of what I've said or to collaborate with any of his ideas, I am eager to hear his voice.
Uncle Job Seneb. I was with the young gentleman today, speaking of the real world, not a thank you, brother. Uncle Job Seneb. Earlier, I was with the young gentleman speaking about the real world, not a fantasy world, a world of motion. When you in a reality that exists and refuses to not exist, then you must obey the commands thereof. Because if it did not exist, you would not exist. So I was talking to the young gentleman about the reality and those who refuse to exist in reality. You had these people called the Luddites, Luddits. They were textile workers who refused the technology that came into existence by the unseen force, meaning the ones who create the thoughts in human minds. They are the ones who dictate what we must follow, not us. We are not relevant. So these Luddites protested. They even went to the warehouse to destroy these machines. They took on physical violence because these machines were taking their jobs. So the French military came in and removed them, killed a few, and there they went. But the machines stayed. Anybody who will not exist within existence will not exist. They're not relevant. So let's talk about the old technology Brother Michael was talking about that at this very moment is not relevant at all. Brother Michael, I admire his speech, but we are commanded to respect those who are in authority. We had the greatest orators like Malcolm X, Farrakhan, Noble Drew Ali, even Oral Roberts, all these people that move millions of people, which we have not done because we're evidence based. We don't deal with emotions, we deal with the facts. All of those talks, all of those amazing words didn't do nothing. Even I don't know if Brother Michael think he is in the circle of Martin Luther King when it comes to speaking. Martin Luther King moved millions of people, but his words didn't do nothing. He was assassinated. So, as those who exist within existence, we know the reality. We do not negate the benefits or the attributes that they contributed to our learning lessons of life. But at this very moment, there is no time for that. At this very moment, we have computers that can do and talk and speak more perfectly than we can even imagine. They have machines that have images of actors that we think they're acting and saying words, but in actuality, these are AI. I saw someone look down on and read a piece of paper while his image was looking at the camera. So he was reading, but his exact image was looking at the camera. So technology don't have time for outdated information. So when we was talking about the Luddites, I gave the example in the real world. I drew a piece of string and I said 10 people had to be employed to make this physical string, not the verbal string, physical string. And each one was paid $1. And then I drew a robot that can produce the same physical string, half of the physical string. So the robot can produce a physical string when prior time 10 physical humans could produce that same string. So I showed the young gentleman, I said, these humans, they have family, they live in a house, they may have to pay electric, they have these debts. And I asked them if an employer can save money to do the same thing, what you think the employer would do? And then it said, of course, have the robot to do it because the robot don't have a family. They don't have lunch breaks, restroom breaks, time off, all this waste of time. It is a waste of time. So when we, like a sperm cell, if the sperm cell is nothing personal, do not make it to the egg in time, it is considered a waste of time. Even the ovum, if it's not used, we'll see it in the toilet to be flushed. So these Luddites looted and destroyed the machines, and now they don't even exist because technology dictates the command. When you go to ancient Egypt or ancient Kemet, we don't even have time for words when you go to Kemet because you don't go to Kemet for words. You go to Kemet because of the mathematics. Even the writings on the wall took a technology to etch itself into the stones. So if it wasn't for the technology, the words wouldn't even exist in the annals of time. So let's look at the human beings who are not adequate. You had a group of human beings, they may have used natural strength, like monkeys. And then the monkeys or the other human beings, they ran into other animals that might have been stronger. So they killed one of them. So the monkey had a problem. It was strong amongst its peers, but it wasn't strong according to the new environment that introduced itself to the monkey. So in order to monkey to maintain its existence, it must evolve to the new environment. Otherwise, you will be extinct because you're not relevant. So maybe the monkey was wrestling with a stronger beast and fell on a branch and grabbed that branch and hit the beast over the head. Then the beast fell back and ran away. So then that monkey received the new technology due to adversity of its irrelevance. Then the other monkey saw the stick. So when the animals came around that was stronger, they all got the sticks. And then the animal was like, oh, I remember that pain. So they run off to somewhere else. Therefore, therefore the monkeys had the ability to maintain their existence in the new era, even though they lived in the same environment, location. Then after that, these monkeys use that technology to go kill other animals that they can store. So their life improved because of this new object called technology. Then they got the opportunity to go to other villages where they didn't have the sticks, beat them over the head, and then they got more grounds. So this technology that was introduced due to adversity advanced them. And then all of a sudden there was a lightning that happened because they was collecting sticks. They saw a tree burning. They put the stick to the fire. And they noticed it connected. Like, whoa, this connects. So I can take this fire or this flaming light with me on this new device I called a stick that I found due to adversity. Then they said, whoa, they touched it. It was hot. Then they had the ability to produce heat and light when the sun dictated that no, humans or animals, I have to do my thing. I'm going to give you night. So the animal said, I don't care. Go away and do your thing because I have this thing called light myself. So they were independent of the sun. They didn't necessarily need the sun because they can produce their own light. So that adversity from the stronger animal or beast was not the enemy. It was something that they had to do in order to exist. And then when they did that, they took on that responsibility. It gave them the advantage to discover other things. So the next technology, as they expanded their territory because they beat people over the head and they have fire, then next thing you know, maybe an apple fell down. Somebody had a bag and it fell with a fire and it started cooking and smelling good. Like, whoa, this smell good. Or maybe they found some marijuana. Just a bush, if fire fell over the bush, and they start having fun. We don't know what happened, but the fire gave them opportunities to discover different things. No, discover more opportunities to the things they was dealing with for millions of years. They've been seeing apples for millions of years, but now they can cook the apple. You see? So now they're beating animals over the head, getting more food. They got this fire that produce heat and light at night, so they don't have to go to sleep. So these things are giving them more time to contemplate because they even conquer greater environment due to the sticks and the fire because they can put the other people's area to flames or scare them. So they are a god amongst those who don't have the stick nor the fire. Because the other ones, they don't know anything about it. They see fire, they run. And they see the humans that look like them with the fire. So they are gods because they can kill them. They control them with this technology. So after that, they said, well, we learned what this thing can do. So let's see if we can build a greater fire. And the greater fire gave them a greater heat, what gave them the ability to do greater things. Maybe bend metal or heat up rocks. So if they have a villager who start having flaming sticks, then what they can do is produce something that can throw the fire to the other villagers. So the thing about it, technology forces us to enjoy ourselves because now we got these things called grocery stores. It took suffering to produce the technology to relieve ourselves from that responsibility so we can go do greater things. Yes, speaking was beautiful because it took time, because they had to do unga bunga according to the average thinking. But I do believe we came to the earth more intelligent, but let's use the common norm. And then they say, well, let's do as stick and as stick and fire and as stick fire and put. So then they learned how to have a communication. So while the mother and grandmother in the hut, she can say while the men are outside and they know what she wants. So she didn't have to leave her space, even though they didn't see her physically, but her sound was important because she was communicating the things that she needed. So her sound was the next technology because she didn't actually had to go out to point. She didn't need to use her fingers because they developed sounds. And a could have been an animal of danger. So they run it because everybody said, oh, that means danger. Because they even heard the animals. When they hear danger, they produce a sound, an alarming sound. So we moved up to sounds, to collective sounds that they agreed upon to express something, even if they want to be there expressing it physically or they express it somewhere else, they can just yell it out. So that gave them the ability to communicate in further distances without moving physically. So after that, they create this thing called writing. Writing became a technology when you had someone in a further location because they advanced to the point that they on horseback or they're creating other civilizations, but they didn't necessarily want to go. So they wrote down these words, and then the person took the words to the king or queen at a location. So they read the person because they got to the point that no matter how loud they yelled, the person couldn't hear it. So the next technology was writing the words down or the sounds down. And then at the time, they didn't have a consistent spelling of the sound. So I would write even though we can say you, or can say ooh, you, but it still sound the same. So when a person read the letters, even though it wasn't spelled the same as they would spell it, it's produced the same sound. So ooh, ah, the person ooh, ah, tigers are on the way. You see what I'm saying? Danger's on the way. So, and then after that, they said, well, we need to come together to produce the same letters, to produce the same words. Then we produce sentences. And then these sentences produces the concept of philosophy because we had the environment to write our thoughts down. And then when you write your thoughts down, you can tell the next generation what happened during the period that they didn't even was not even in existence. So that's how knowledge grew. So the ooh ah becomes ooh or ooh ah ooh. So it became more complex. Then they philosophizing by something they can't prove physically. So since it was new, because these words produce storytellers. So at night they got the fire and then they have the moonlight, then they start telling fanciful stories. So the person, because the community was not advanced verbally, but they understood, like babies learn how to hear before they speak. So the one that can tell the greatest stories, they had the audience. They was like, ooh, ah, such and such telling us a story at night. So all the villagers start eventually telling stories with the common words or the common sounds. Then the people appreciated that. So that made the technology advance, more advanced than the people who couldn't do it. Because they could say, well, your name is ooh because when you was born, it was raining. So your name is ooh. And if you listen to the natives today in 2023, their names almost the same way. Ooh. And the other son said, ooh, ah, ooh. Then the other son, ooh, ah, ooh. So even to this day, they still do that. But you see the progression. So that was important of that time. It was very relevant. It was advanced. So after you have these people telling stories, and we even to this day, we marvel over stories, but we have this thing called motion pictures. You don't have to hear, you can see everything. Now we have 3D glass, but not to this pro. Let's go back to the past. So the most important person at the time was the storyteller. He was the god. He's the one they paid. He was like, yo, I want to be, I want to marry him because he's a storyteller. You know what I'm saying? He's the one because he told the stories. And then after the storyteller, they wrote these stories in books. And then the person who can write was the person that was powerful at this time because he was the one bringing the new technology to the human beings. So the writers was the gods. Like, oh, do you know how to read? No, let's go to the Catholic Church. They still to this day don't want you to read and write nothing. They still think they're God, even though a bomb can just wipe them off. They're not relevant. Really not relevant today, but it was relevant. But that's why the preacher was important. The voodoo man, because he told the stories right? And then people appreciate the stories, and they wrote the stories in a book. So the voodoo man became the dude in the hood because his great great grandfather had this 2-page book that was ooh ooh ah ah, and the people couldn't read it, but he can read. He was the one with the modern technology, so he physically felt the benefits of the technology because he knew that was his great great grandfather's books, while the other ones didn't have the physical writing of their great great grandfather. So that created self esteem, and that created hierarchy. The Levitical priesthood, they are the ones that can tell the words. So that technology set them aside willingly, the others, because they couldn't do it. They felt weak. I can't do it. He can tell a story. But time didn't care. You still had to move on. You understand what I'm saying? So these, and now if you want to do your YouTube video, there were a Nobel, I think about 10 to 8 Nobel Prize winners at the table, and one of them was a literature person. And even he said he was not adequate to sit on that table. I think he spoke a few languages and he was just an expert in writing, but he was around physicists, and he knew that he was inferior at that table. And they let him know that he was inferior at that table. Why? Because all he using to spread his information is their technology. So he was not even relevant. But he did have relevance. But that time period is up. And now it's so not relevant. We got great people like Martin Luther King can't even do nothing to the physical world, but just disappear. Matter of fact, they pushed him down to he was a dreamer compared to the ones that had the guns and the weapons. So the ones with the weapons were the ones who can tell the story. And that's why we say his story, even though the story is not accurate. And now we know if you tell a lie enough, it becomes the truth in the minds of the people. So they become a god because they're telling you lies. And you believe in lies. Like, what's the new day? Because we wondering why we're suffering. God, we need to let it rain. But come to find out, the new day is at sunset. So we're going against, you see what I'm saying? So when you read the Bible, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. I didn't see God say the heavens and the earth. Created. So that's action. That's producing. And even internet has proven that the irrelevant of words, because it's so many people who we call them pimps. They're online with 4 or 5, 6, and 7 wives over words. But now the internet is recording everybody's actions. So you got people who was eloquent at one time and they received the benefits from the dumb masses. And then they said, oh, look what such and such did. So nah, I can't go to church no more because what such and such did. Even your boy Eddie Long, all that big talking, beautiful words. But the actions doing the recordings and said, you could have got away with that yesterday when we were recording you behind. But now we're a little more advanced. So you can't get away with that stuff. You see? So there's a time and place for everything. Now, one thing that is so important with reading in words, because one thing that we haven't accomplished yet is the vibration of words. So when you hear singers or eloquent speakers, something that technology cannot do at the moment is when you hear a preacher and he or she are expressing with emotion. We are still moved by the feeling of the emotion while the words are vibrating from their mouth. And that's why sometimes people play the organ. That's technology too. So it's not to the deaf, dumb, and blind, words are relevant. But to the gentleman, I showed them jobs that disappear and been disappearing. So if you want to be relevant, if you want to be able to take care of your family and yourself, time is demanding that you are dealing with technology. The other day, Brother Michael, I posted district attorneys were being overwhelmed by clients and they were only making 50,000 plus a year. While you have prostitutes online making millions of dollars. So you see what I'm saying? So even they are not even relevant. So all this stuff, it is frightening. I mean, and that's where courage come into play. Because yes, technology removed some jobs, but it also created other jobs. And see, that's what people talk about today because you cannot tell existence what it's going to do. You only going to submit to it because I remember when we was creating electricity, another country was creating electricity at the same time. So time dictates what we enjoy. And we benefit, we enjoy it, we love it. We can hear people with beautiful voices, beautiful orators. So it's still relevant. Because another thing, Brother Michael, I'm telling you, reading and writing and speaking develops parts of your brain. And that's why, as you know, and one thing that your wife knows is that when you write in calligraphy and penmanship, when you speak eloquently and write eloquently, it still connects certain things, neural connections in your brain. So it's still relevant. And we know those who don't read and write because guess what? You have to read on a computer screen. You have to speak, you have to write, you have to, but we got this Grammarly and new other stuff that's writing books for people now. So a lot of other stuff, you know what I mean? So it's coming new, you know what I'm saying? But we see it coming, on that part, specific, but that's only going to make us dumber. So that's why it's good to still write in cursive, good to still speak, good to still read. So I'm not, and time is not saying it's not relevant because right now they try and put computers in your brain instead of developing your brain. So only fools gonna fall for that, which they will. But so no, because there's still a lot of deaf, dumb, and blind people in the world. There's 85% of the population. So oratory skills is for them. But my thing, Brother Michael, is not having the ability to know how it feels to be a man in one human lifetime because I have yet to spend currency, cash money with a black face on it and receive something in exchange. You know, I haven't seen now they got a chance to see that in the 60s, but we haven't got the chance. We haven't got the opportunity to see none of that, experience none of that. And that's one thing I have a problem with because I was around and I believe all the great orators who move the masses. But look at the masses today, brother. So I'm saying we don't have that evidence. And remember, I showed you those brothers who are moving spaceships, huge contraptions that they look like ants to something they made while we're sitting here talking. Remember, these are human beings too. But can you imagine being a part of the ones who even made the screw to a contraption like that? So, just like the monkeys who had the sticks, the other monkeys could not understand how it felt because those monkeys had more protection against the monsters that was stronger than both of the monkeys. So these monkeys with the big contraptions, they don't have to worry about the electricity going out. They are not in the same class from people who have to pay electric bills because their environment demands, because they are creating stuff that these electric companies need and can't even comprehend. So they above that kind of stuff. You think they having outage problems, brother? At NASA and other places like that? No. That's like the monkeys with the fire. We are being controlled by the environment while they say, okay, so be it. We're gonna start a fire in our cave. And they're enjoying themselves. You see what I'm saying? So they're in the same environment, but they are freer. And then their women and children have more respect because they looking around and enjoying themselves without pauses. See, that's what we are inquiring at our age. At least have the ability to have a senior citizen facility that when we get old, that we know that people are treat us right instead of being like my mom and others, having bed sores because no one they are too busy to turn us, which is coming. That's only a few years away. So I think that's a wise investment to get these finances or build these facilities. It's easy to create an old folks home in a house. You see what I'm saying? Because it's called projection, it's called vision. So it's only your protection is not something to be looked down upon. But as you know, you hear some of these singers, they can't sing anymore like they used to. And look at Mariah Carey. She started receiving money on the old Christmas songs because of technology. So now she's making money again like she did in the past because of an old Christmas song has been sped up and put on YouTube. You see what I'm saying? So it's a benefit. It's nothing to be afraid of. It's something that's going to help if we have the faith. That's all. Just have the faith like the sperm cell. It didn't have a book to read, eyes to see, ears to hear. It had the faith and the due diligence. So if we started that way, it's going to be hard to get away from that because all the other brothers and sisters on this earth are doing that. They have the troubles, but they keep trying. Just like all the black people who enjoyed the words, they came together, they built Black Wall Street and all these places, but a lot of them just gave up. And like I said, white people, blacks like to blame white people, but white people destroy themselves all the time, but they come back. Asians, everybody come back but us, black men, specifically black men in America. So that's my thing, brother, because I don't know where you were at physically, but I was physically around these mighty men, these great orators that move. And all I seen was them die and I get older and our community get worse. So I'm like, because it was beautiful in the past, being around it, all the men, ooh, it was good. It looked pretty. But it didn't unfold to create nothing for us in the future. Nothing tangible. So at this point, it's like, dang, I hope we do something for ourselves as men. That's all it is. It's a cry to at least do something because time is moving. But we have the physical evidence, which we didn't have about just words. We enjoyed the words and we did things with the words. Like the nation, they had farmland, all that kind of stuff. But right now, you can't. Elijah Muhammad, third grade education, Farrakhan, and all that. When he had cancer, did he use his words to help his cancer, or was it technology that helped and saved him? It wasn't the prayers. I mean, that was help, of course. We love that kind of stuff. But if we want to talk the truth, it's just something about time forces us to do things, which we'll appreciate later on. So Messiah concepts, we got the evidence that no, no, you can be a Messiah and you're gonna just die like an average person, and we still gonna suffer. Because Messiahs was relevant in the past because they was in a small community. And then they created kings. That's where kings come from because the Messiah had the great words and they fought wars and they lived and so that's from God. But right now, a human, a God? No, we are not anymore. We're not relevant almost because machines are keeping our electric on, our heat on. We are dependent. That means we got to produce according to our new friend, which is not our enemy, like the fire. Fire wasn't the enemy. The stick was an enemy. So this technology will only behoove us that we are in this thing. In 7 years, we'd be in 2030. In 7 years. So restaurants gonna be automated because remember they give the warnings. Because remember, brother Michael, back then they had clockmakers, people that made calendars. These were different factories. People that have telephones, flashlights, all this kind of stuff. Now you can do it on a cell phone. All the things that was individualized, all the technology. Because you and I grew up in a time period, we just saw the amazement of laser discs. Like, woo, quality, crisp sound, and streaming just get out of here. We don't even see CDs nowhere now. Get out of here. Oh, I'm telling you, I know you remember that. I remember seeing those discs. I was like, man, what a disc made out of nickel. You know what I mean? It was exciting. But now, brother Michael, look where they went. They just streaming, just knocked it out. And guess what? We enjoy streaming. We love streaming. I like CDs because if electricity and all that stuff go down, then that's why we love books, right? So it's not inadequate. Your gift is a gift that you give to the world, period. But all we're saying is that we are human beings growing in a time period that is moving. And for some reason, even lawyers, doctors are not making enough money according to their bills. Matter of fact, hold on. So, matter of fact, brother, look at all these people who are in their 70s have outlived their savings. You heard a brother I spoke who was 79. I'm around a tremendous amount of people who are already retired that have to work because of inflation. There are people that's suffering in their older years. Now, if they don't have a chance, can you imagine us in 2050? If they are suffering, they got law degrees, science degrees, but they outlived their savings because they got 30-year mortgages. So they got the 30-year mortgage at 30. Now their mortgage is still there at 60, but they got inflated. And then they had to use the money, their equity, to do repairs on the house. So then they lose the house, even though they've been there for 30 years. Now they got to go to an old folks home because they can't work a job. This is what I'm around. So you imagine 20 years from now. Think about that, Brother Michael. What do you think about that? How our life going to exist adequately 20 years from now? Because you'll be about what, 62? Still young.
62.
Still young. Our bodies, we going to be good.
Yeah. Because of a certain technology of health, wellness, that regardless of the technology that forms pills, that forms vitamins that are made from processed material, overly processed harvestings of certain chemicals, seems to supersede it. The fastest fast food you'll ever have cannot beat an apple or celery or kale. However, I believe that the dumb, deaf, and blind, even if they were staying in place, broken as a clock, they'd still be right twice a day. And those two times that they were right, I'm pretty sure that they were staying upon the old saying, what is it good for? If we are in the business of progression, and that progression renders a result that is taken for granted, then what is it good for? Now, again, this is that dead clock speaking, not me. The dead clock that's right twice a day, because the very next second, the way we would prove them wrong is because we are not doing this selflessly. One of the most daring downloads in my brain as of late is to teach myself to become a selfish person in regards to my health, in regards to my finances, in regards to things that are exclusive to me. It is a download in my mind that seemed like a virus at first because I was trained to be highly empathetic and thoughtless and selfless. So I attempted to reject the idea of thinking for self first. There have been certain occasions where a person would give me the scenario: if you were in a crashing plane, would you place your air mask on someone else first or then yours? Or would you put it on yours first? Now, we know what the correct answer is, but I would give them the incorrect one because my wife would be in the next seat beside me, or my kids will be in the seats in front of me. Selfless thinking. My father was a very selfless person. This is an example. Okay. He did not plan in any way any type of insurance for himself. He did not plan in any way except when it was imposed upon him and he was reprimanded for even having bulletproof armor when going into battle as a narcotics officer. He was so selfless, it seemed suicidal. And I didn't understand why until connecting some dots that might even be thought of as connecting them the wrong way. Maybe he died at 51 in his sleep due to these different issues in his health and the different things that he saw that he collected upon his consciousness and carried with him like a world on his shoulders for the last 10 years of his life, because he did not want to live to be 60 or 70 or 80 or even 52. He died during when most people say they're having their midlife crisis, which by divisive of dividing the numbers, I had to experience a midlife crisis at 24 to bury my father, who was 51, and then my uncle the next month, who was 49, and then his family members, and then friends of their family members. 13 people in 13 months. And even just for kicks and giggles, I had to put my own dog down because of the selflessness and the love for other people other than themselves. Have I created anything and had a selfish approach towards it? Yes. Has it rendered many result? No. So whatever we create, brother, whatever it is, I can tell you these few things for sure. It would not be a book because they would not read it. It would not be a poem, no matter how personable it would be deemed of their own life, but they would only take it in as a fast food meal and defecate it on the other end to forget its contents. It would not be of any technology that dealt with my voice or my written word. This I know, for I have tried this on many occasions to no avail. However, many other bills ago, brother, I remember you speaking to me in regards to environment in which the product is to be presented. For you had given me quite an example of a professional violinist that was sitting inside of a subway getting pennies for the same thing that he was getting paid hundreds of thousands of dollars playing at Carnegie Hall the day before as a social experiment for himself. I am in no way near the caliber based upon environment of Martin Luther King or Malcolm X or any of those figures. Because, quite frankly, if I was, I probably would be just as dead as they are. I guess that's a preservation plus for myself. But I do want to feel that if I am going to leave this place, I'm going to leave here with something that's going to outlive me. You are talking, you are in the midst of a talk that involves two people, one of which has a generation of his own DNA blended with the DNA of their mother, and one who does not. Those who are watching right now are in the midst of a table, a not so round table, that marvels at these inventions and yet wonders in the world of words, knowing that all things have already been said and done and there's nothing new under the sun. What more else could be possibly invented? Or would a regurgitation of anyone else's inventions be sufficient enough of our souls to say, at least when I die, this thing will still be standing? Whatever it is, I hope that it is more than something that you place a quarter in and it does a little dance. I hope that whatever it is that we put together, that it is worth every bit of labor to maintain its stature rather than one day finding it in its dilapidation, us rolling in our graves to an ungrateful world. There's a television show that I watched past couple of days. It's called The Sandman of all things. It is talking about this god of dreams who has lost his tools. He lost a ruby. He lost a helm, a mask that covers his face, and he loses his sand, all because of a seance that brought him into a circle for which the inhabitants of said seance were stealing the artifacts to sell them on the black market. And he sought out a conquest for reparations or revenge in whichever form he found it. And he eventually got to get his helm, he got to get his rubies, and he got to get his sand. And then he got a huge, heaping serving of depression. Why? Because he sought out what he was going to do, he did it, it was done, and there were no other wars left to fight. The worst thing that you could take from a warrior is the war, because then they have no purpose. Then they find themselves feeling as if there's nothing else to do, because they trained to do this and are now, because they have won all of what needs to be won, they're brought to do that. I was brought on this planet to be something that I never had to fully manifest. To be three things: to be a prover of people wrong, to be a warrior for battles that I knew not as my own, but as selfishly as my parents' battles, and to be a minister of both of those philosophies to a world who cares little, if at all, about that, given the environment. My ruby, my helm, my sand. One day we will be old. One day we will be questioned at whatever McDonald's still exists by whatever AI that is giving us our 50-cent coffee, because our depiction of our faces will not match the age of Gregorian years that is on said identification card, according to its calculation. I am one of many generations who did not prepare for the future because they believed they were all going to die young anyway. Some embraced it a little bit better than we would have ever liked. And the only war that I'm fighting is the raging against the dying of a light inside of my own heart. And if that renders nothing more than just a building with I and Brother Eli's names upon it as a retirement home that deems itself better than most convalescents, then so be it. If that means that I have rendered enough respect and reverence and even financial contributions, or dare I even say it, invention onto whatever ship has our names in bold print in cursive on the side of it, then so be it. If that means that in the next year of or 6 months of the build, we are no longer wearing these white shirts and robes of ministerial garb, but lab coats and green gloves, so be it. But we will not die for nothing. I know Brother Eli won't. I say we in faith. It is the very instance that I must say that even though we reside in fact and not belief, I must believe. But of course, all of this is just a segue because they are using articulate poetic words. How ironic is that? The other day, there was an AI that took 5 words and wrote a poem. A poem, not a book report, not a dissertation on the subject matter, but wrote a poem as if it were a human with emotion. This is the the equivalent of iron sights to a poet, the assassination of humanity as we know it. And I have no bulletproof armor. My dad didn't either. I didn't choose any. And if I be assassinated in this arcane knowledge, this arcane wisdom, this arcane understanding, this arcane art, this arcane technology, that a computer can take over the emotion in the lexicon that I find in combinations of words and bring to you today, and deem me that much more irrelevant even to the air that I breathe. I see myself not dying with my fingers pointed towards the killer. I see it with my arms stretched out, like Malcolm, not Martin. And even that is something deemed a dangerous fantastic that I just can't help because I am the poet. Without much more to say.
Brother Michael. When I stopped speaking, I was so shocked, and my apologies because it was after your required time for the night. That's why I'm expressing like I didn't know. So my apologies because you had a requirement tonight, and we're actually 24 beyond the requirement. Because remember, we respect the God's time, and I don't think you would ever not ever be relevant at all. I'm gonna just say this: there is a cry. Remember the fifth element? Remember how she just lifted up and she just screamed? Something in my spirit feels like that. When all the walls start falling down, meaning that I've seen all the powerful people I looked up to die in the world, and I'm at 50, and it's like, and I'm feeling my mortality. It's like a scream because I had the faith. I just knew we wouldn't be here. And now it's coming into a panic because no matter what, the rolling pins are rolling and all the people don't even exist no more. And this is such not a good feeling. And I'm around so many people, good people, as you literally heard yourself, one person out of many I know that's in their senior years and are suffering. And it's more each day, more. So I just hope that we can do something um, to save ourselves. And even Brother Michael, the gentleman we were doing binary code, brother. And you know what would be amazing? You have people that make their own computer language by studying the binary numbers. So we make and put your poetry and it become a computer language. That would be something in our 50s and 60s to say, look at this. So your poetry will exist because like Python, all they did was study the binary letters and they made up their own according to the binary numbers. So we can use all your raps and all your poetry and then line them up like that. And that will be such a magnificent thing because even though you don't exist physically, people are still using your computer language to produce products that they need. So instead of learning Python, they learning Brother Michael's poems that will rock the world. So it would not be C plus and C plus plus and all that kind of stuff. It'd be C plus Python and all this stuff and whatever Brother Michael choose. And then we can create a robot that can look like you and speak and move like you and use your words. And then there you are, a permanent fixture in existence.
That's something that I would. That's something I could admit. Uh, I would be proud of, and even more so to be in the knowledge of people who, if they had enough time or effort in their schedules, could actually in one day create that. It'd be amazing. But yes, brother Eli, thank you for everything. Well, I thank God. Of course, you would
Yes.
say that. But yes, I am indeed. Uh, I will have to repent for the time to God, to the God of time, with disrespect towards it. But I had to die on that hill tonight. I had to say what I needed to say. But
But be more specific because you're poetic, brother. And I have to be clear. Be more specific when you're meaning these things. You have to die and some other stuff so I can have understanding in my being. Because if you are a brother, I have to be honest, we be on one accord. Like as scientists, we create and there's a problem that's produced. But as scientists, we both looking at the problem from different perspectives because we are solution based. So we
to
got the stick and the fire.
yeah, to uh, it's a it's a saying that I've learned from my children actually. When they say I will die on that hill, it just means I will stand firm, whether it's right or wrong, that I will do thus or such. And I felt that whether right or wrong, I needed to say what I said today um, on the bill. But it is, yes, it is an hour and a half. We will indeed come to a close, and I will have to work double time. That is borrowed, actually, to uh, to make sure that things get done. So let us go to our close. For indeed, the candle cannot complain against the darkness and the harshness. It instead emits itself, then admits to itself that it is everything that it ever needed. It is the light, and we
We are.
are that light. We take it in, and we show beyond a shadow of a doubt that we are not harmed. Multitude of blessings of all who have witnessed what has happened tonight, and to all of you that are in a presence of clear danger in regards to our future.
Mm.
It is all worth it. Every step from this moment forward is all worth it. Blessings.
My last piece, brother. We know exactly where we're going, and we're going back to the Father and the Mother in heaven, whoever we see. And no matter what we do, at least we kept our word, because our only destiny is to leave this body and to form into a new being. So whatever efforts we do, we may not perceive them at this moment, but time continue to exist, and we will continue to exist. So we will be successful, even if it's not in this physical lifetime, because we are infinite beings. And I hope and pray the sister with the cancer continue to do her struggle as we want to be consistent in our love and peace. And Amen, Amen, Amen. Thank you for your beautiful time, Brother Michael, and your family. And Brother Michael, remember, take care of that side. And our original schedule was from 7 to 8. That was our original time. But brother wanted to extend it.
Yeah.
So that's what's no worries, brother. It's a loop. It's a loop. Blessings.
Blessings.